You're listening to eBizRadio, the place to go if you want to know about the world of business. For daily podcast and article uploads, go to eBizRadio.com or follow us on Twitter at eBizRadio Global. My name is Nick Snow, and for another edition of eBiz Wires, I am now joined by Neil Hobbs of Hobbs Sinclair Accounting. Neil, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me. We are chatting the concept of business rescue. Now, an accounting firm, others I think would associate with different business practices, but business rescue is not one that I have heard of before. Why don't we start off with what exactly business rescue is?
Okay, Nick, thanks very much. Business rescue is quite simply taking a business that is struggling to meet its obligations and hopefully catching it before it has gone beyond the point of no return in terms of its liquidity crisis, to put the business under the administration of an independent expert who will take the reins, as it were, stop the debt cycle, restructure the business, clip off the debt if the company is overburdened with debt, and restart the business. Engaged in business rescue in this country where they have clients who are struggling, and as accountants we've also engaged with our clients to assist them in times of stress. What is new about business rescue is the New Companies Act, which gives the legal mechanism to stop the business, stop any legal action against it,
right?
Giving the practitioner the chance to gather breath, restructure, reorganize the business, and then relaunch the business. So that's really what's new about business rescue.
Wonderful. So it really gives somebody an opportunity to almost analyze their business from every aspect and then kind of get it going from the ground up once again. I think let's backtrack a bit, because the concept is absolutely fantastic. But let's get a little bit of your background, where you started and how you came to start Hobbs Sinclair. And because I think, of course, that will give the listeners a little bit more of an idea into you and how you came up with the concept.
Okay, no, thanks. Firstly, after I qualified, I did spend time running my own businesses. So I had a group of 5 businesses. And I think when I came back into the profession, that really gave me a new perspective on where the owner-manager is sitting when he's dealing with his auditor or accountant with respect to his business. He's really looking for information that is valuable to him on a daily basis and strategically important to him. So I've focused on owner-manager businesses and entrepreneurs because I understand those people, I think, pretty well. And the purpose of our practice is to surround the entrepreneur with as many complementary services as possible that he can have delivered through a single mechanism. So the key really is to get the entrepreneur to focus on his or her strength, which might be selling, might be operations, and make sure the other bases of administration and finance are covered so that the financial hygiene in the business is good. The financial information that's coming out of the business is good in that it's giving the owner of the business the essential data and accurate data that he can use on a daily basis, making his decisions. Surely the quality of decisions is better if you have good quality information.
Yes, no, most definitely.
So that's really the vision behind my practice when I started it 15 years ago. And we also have a sort of less is more philosophy. We would rather invest more of our time into a smaller number of clients and take them to a point where they can be as successful as possible. Then have too many clients, too much work backlogged, and not really have quality time with each client.
Yes. So, of course, the quality time thing, I think, is something that a lot of businesses miss. Clients need to be engaged with the product that they're buying. So, I imagine this is a stumbling point for a lot of companies where it comes to after sales and the appropriate actions which are involved there. Now, I imagine without proper after sale, you can often end up losing a client and obviously losing income. So I imagine part of your business rescue plan is how to retain clients as well.
Absolutely. So, we would look for a time when we actually invest in our client to really get to understand them, their needs, their family's needs, what the expectations of their business are, and then devise a strategy together with them that will put them in that place and space, and then walk with them for the next 20, 30 years in running their business in accordance with what their needs are from the business. So, certainly we want to make sure the customers we have or the clients we have are doing well and are succeeding. Then we don't have to go and look for a new customer every week because the ones we have are growing.
So obviously with growth, that will lead to a positive effect, because in helping your customers at Hobbs Sinclair, by helping them grow, of course, the income for you is obviously positive because, there's more money invested in the business rescue plan. But then I imagine the word of mouth and the referrals are also good because it enlightens people as to how their business could benefit. So what would be a struggling business in your opinion and someone who should consider something like business rescue?
Okay. To consider business rescue, ideally you're sitting in a situation where the board of directors sit around the table and they say, guys, looking at the cash flows, we are heading for trouble. Within 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, we will not be able to meet our obligations as and when they fall due. And that's the point at which the board of directors should say we need to consider opting for business rescue. That then allows the business rescue practitioner time to get in and save the day before the company collapses and cannot meet its obligations on a daily basis. So making the decision to opt for business rescue timelessly is one of the most critical factors in a successful business rescue.
And now, someone who engages in business rescue, what is the process for them? And what can they do to actively participate? Because I imagine this requires effort from all stakeholders in the business. Yes.
So the process can voluntarily be started by a simple board resolution, or if it's a CC, a members resolution. That gets lodged with a CRPC. And from that day onwards, the company is under business rescue, which means that all legal action against the company is halted. So there's a moratorium on legal action, and that really gives a breathing space. Business rescue can also be initiated by the trade union, or by an employee, or by a single director, or shareholder, or a creditor. That's a longer process because that has to go through the court and be awarded by the court. But the voluntary business rescue is very quick and easy to get into, and it's absolutely essential that you choose the right business rescue practitioner for your business. Because effectively what happens is the business rescue practitioner takes over as CEO of the business, with the board being subordinate to him. Now, the board obviously would include the owner when we're talking about an owner-managed business. And I think that the critical thing to rehabilitating the business is rehabilitating the owner, and putting him in a position where he can have more reliable management systems and techniques. And I think, if I put it very bluntly, a teachable owner, you can always save the business. If the owner has inherent weaknesses that will recur, he's in a cycle of making bad decisions, business rescue isn't going to work.
Yes, and of course the cycle of bad decisions would probably be the first thing that would have to be changed. So I can imagine that there's sometimes some barriers to adoption that may be quite difficult. When it comes to engaging with the new and change, I think in South Africa particularly, we also have a lot of very old school businesses, things that have been done a certain way for many, many years. So of course some of the challenges must be actually changing the mindset of the business owner or management in particular, whoever is in charge.
Very much so, especially with kind of e-business really cutting out the gap between the producer and the consumer. So margins are continually under squeeze, so a relook at overhead structures. So what we were sitting with maybe 15 years ago as what we would think is a minimum overhead structure is too rich today. So being very frank about cutting back and it's a clinical decision you've got to make. You've got to have the overheads at a point where you can compete effectively with people who have a similar structure.
Absolutely. So now, when it comes to South African businesses in particular, we have so many opportunities to do so many things in this country, yet somehow we still, in my opinion, we seem to lag a little bit behind international business practice. How can Africa do business with the world while still maintaining an identity as an African business?
I think we're very well placed, especially in terms of doing business within Africa. And if I look at businesses that are flourishing at the moment, they're businesses who are taking our skills and expertise and products and selling them into sub-Saharan Africa. So that is a huge opportunity right on our doorstep. For us to go and compete against China in the German market is perhaps undoable. Probably certainly undoable.
Yes.
So I think we're well placed in that we understand a little bit about Africa. Our infrastructure and technology is good. So from that perspective, we are making headway. And I'm surprised, actually, that we're not making faster headway because there's tremendous demands up north of us. But just I want to touch on the other thing was we have a very bad habit in this country amongst owner-managers, and that is to overtrade on their capital. We tend to seek turnover before we seek margin. And I think that, if I could say across the board, that is probably the cycle that takes a company into a business rescue type scenario. The owner knows he's losing cash, and his instinctive reaction is to go and sell more.
Yes.
And that exacerbates the problem because he's now got to have more working capital in his business to be properly stocked and to have a full debtors book.
So do we just have a bad management of money? I mean, do we just not know how to work with our capital?
Yeah, as a kind of general comment, the average South African business person does not understand balance sheet management and working capital management. And that's where, his accountant can really help him. And it's also refining your turnover. Cut out the work that you're doing at a 15% margin and maximize what you're doing at a 20 or 30% margin. Because all that extra effort to chase lower margin business destroys the quality of your good work.
Yes. And obviously that's not what you want. You want positivity and positive change, and you want it to continue, and you want the whole mindset about the business to change. Otherwise, they will just end up back at square one. Now, you must have a few success stories. Of course, you may not be able to divulge actual business details, but perhaps you have one or two success stories of businesses that have managed to turn around and are now doing very well.
Yeah, the one that immediately springs to mind is a construction business in the Eastern Cape. With very good contracts, there's a lot of road works, a lot of civil construction work, quite a big workforce, 450 employees, and a very good business and a profitable business. But what they hadn't got right was their balance sheet structure. So we were sitting with 30 million rands worth of yellow metal, earth-moving equipment, and that was funded to the tune of 4.5 million rand with installment sale agreements. So there's a mismatch of long-term assets with long-term funding. Consequently, they're funding out of working capital, out of their short-term creditors. They hit a contract where they took some losses, and they lost their liquidity overnight.
Wow. So
there's a business that is solvent but illiquid.
Yes, no workable capital.
The owner, in his mind, is saying it's a good thing to pay off debt. He's paying off his debt too fast and taking the working capital out of his business. So that was a really good business rescue because we could identify the problem. There was an investor who was willing to come on board. In fact, there were two. And that guy, that investor put in 10 million rand to a company that had net asset value of 30 million rand. So for 10 million rand, he got 40 million rand worth of assets.
Brilliant.
The business is smoking today. It's properly capitalized. The volume of work is taken up, and it's really a success story. So from being in a slight loss to 12 million rand profit, it's a really good turnaround.
That's absolutely brilliant, and I think it just shows with positive change and the correct understanding, the right result can come. And I think too many people, from what I hear when you talk about when we've been chatting now, too many people think they can just go it alone. Not enough people think, well, actually, perhaps I should hire someone who is better at the maths and business and analyzing the business cash flow and creditors and debtors, because there are ways to manage it. I know that there is in particular a massive grocery chain here in South Africa that pays their creditors or their debtors only after 3 months, because they know they need to hold a certain amount of liquid capital to ensure that they generate a bit of interest and that, of course, the value of the company grows.
Absolutely, and that's a reverse model. The more turnover they do, the more cash they have.
Exactly. So it definitely sounds like there are positives to just opening your mind to doing business a little bit differently. Of course, like you said earlier, it does make sense to be out of debt, but where does that put you if you don't have anything to buy anything new?
There's a time when debt is bad, and then there's a time when debt becomes sensible. And, above a certain level of turnover, it is appropriate to carry a certain level of debt and have the opportunity of deducting the cost of the interest on that debt against your tax bill. If I could just probably put my finger on the one thing that I think is the greatest key to success with an owner-managed business, that entrepreneur has 8 to 10 hours a day, maybe works 12 to 14. Those hours have got to be spent in the area of his strength. So if he's a good salesperson, that's what he must be doing for as many hours of the day as possible. If he's good at operations, that's what he should be doing. If he's a construction site manager, that's what he should be doing. And what we endeavor to do is say, right, let's give you as many hours as possible in your key area of strength. Let us take off your plate the management of the petty cash and the cash book and the cash flow and the tax management and the PAYE and the VAT and so forth, and reassure you that it's done and it's right. You don't have to worry about it. So he has peace of mind to go and expand his business where he is best utilized in the business.
Yes,
and that sort of critical time, critical asset in the business is the owner's time. If that is invested properly, we'll accelerate profits. If he's spending 2 hours a day trying to manage cash flow, it's 2 hours away from the coalface of his business.
Yes, absolutely. So now, if folks want to get in touch with you, if they're interested in finding out how they can rescue their business, maybe they don't even know if they need rescue or not, but are just looking for somebody to look into it and figure out for them what might be going wrong if they're having some trouble, how do they get in touch with you, Neil?
Okay, my cell phone number is 082-557-6367. I'll say that again, 082-557-6367. My email, NEILLH @Hobbs Inc. HOBBSINC.coza. Nick, I love people who run their own business. I'm available 24 hours a day. If someone would like to give me a call, as you say, ideally before business rescue, just to say, let's have a look at my business, how it's structured. I'm available for that conversation. I'd love to engage in it.
Wonderful. And I'm sure there's plenty of listeners out there who are going to want to engage with you. And that brings us wonderfully to the end of this edition of eBiz Wires. Neil, it's been the greatest of pleasure chatting to you right here on eBiz Radio.
Thanks, Nick. I've enjoyed it.